Alrighty, hello and welcome to the Grimm Times podcast. Today we are going to talk about something a little different. I have my brother Zach, who is going to be joining me on the podcast shortly. Today we're going to discuss modern day school systems and procedures and things like that. How it compares to when I was in school, and which was surprisingly a long time ago at this point. The big topic right now for everybody seems to be bullying. Do you think there's any bullying going on in your class anyway?
Well, I think it varies. I can see it a little bit, I guess, but I think it affects more of the bigger population schools.
Yeah, I guess if you have the small town kind of complex, then, most likely it's not going to be quite as prevalent. But every now and then you will have that kid who is just an idiot and, uses his size to pick on others. I can think of...
Yeah, for sure.
A couple of examples in particular. I won't name names or anything, but I will say his initials are WW, so I don't know. I'm sure that, I'm not in the class, so I don't know for sure, but just based on meeting some of these people, you can tell, kind of what happens, and so, yeah, I don't know. It just depends. Some people would say, oh, no, it doesn't happen at all, and this kid's an angel, and it's not at all, going to happen, but... This is my podcast, and I can say what I want to say. So, moving on. Back when I was in school, I didn't really notice bullying, or I didn't really, think of it as existing at that point. Basically, everybody was kind of on the same level and could stand up for themselves and things like that. But mostly, for me, high school was not very fun. I would say my best memories of school were in middle school, probably. And even maybe 5th grade, probably, somewhere around there would be the ideal time as being my favorite in particular, because I remember riding the school bus. You would have an hour-long ride on the school bus some mornings, if we were the very first ones to get picked up, which sometimes we were, depending on the route that they took for that quarter of the year or that half of the year. And we would be the very first ones, and so early in the morning, 7 a.m. getting on the bus, or 6:50, you'd be in for a ride, and you could either sleep or you could read a book or do whatever. And at that time, Pokemon cards were really coming out and being popular, and so that was one of the things that we really did. We would trade Pokemon cards on the school bus, and so I really enjoyed that. That was fun for me. A lot of people had different cards, and everybody. We'd get our own little booklets and keep pages and pages of these cards in them. And that would be more the highlight of our day than the actual school part of it. Lunch was always my favorite part because it's not school. And so, I don't know. We used to do a lot of different things. Do you do anything like that in school nowadays?
Sort of. It's now the society has the new game Magic. And everybody's playing that. Me, personally, I don't really play it, but... Yeah, and
And you're a freshman?
Yeah. No, I'm a sophomore.
Sophomore this year, okay.
Yeah, but, yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm enjoying school right now. I definitely thought my ideal time for school would be in my junior high years because, just frankly, the work was a lot more easier. And I still got to hang out with friends, and I rode the bus too, from kindergarten all the way till I was a freshman actually, and we sort of did the same stuff, but we had different card games.
I would say middle school was the best for quite a few reasons. One being there was a certain innocence that came with being in middle school, whereas it's really disappointing to me nowadays with these freshmen and sophomores and juniors and seniors, the way that they're so polluted with society nowadays. The language being one of them, all the swearing and stuff. These younger guys, they just throw it around and they think it sounds cool or something and makes them grown up. But really, it's just disappointing because you need to be a role model for people, no matter how old you are. And I try to do that as well with this show. You've never heard me use a swear word or anything. Well, I'm pretty sure you've never heard that. I try to keep it really PG for pretty much everybody. I try to be, somebody who is like-minded, but willing to say the things that nobody else will say. And, I do it in a professional manner that's not involving swearing. And that's what, with Art Bell's it's not a podcast, his radio show, Dark Matter. He's on Sirius XM radio, and you can say whatever you want to say on that radio. But he is keeping it just like the old Coast to Coast show with no swearing. And I like to keep it that way as well. And I know I hold myself to a certain standard. And so, I mean, it's just one of those things. The innocence that comes with being in middle school, it's before you get polluted by society, really. And I wish there was a way to stop it, but you just can't. And, I mean, one day, maybe, yeah, people will figure it out. But and the ones who are mature enough, they will realize that, you don't have to swear, you don't have to go off on different tangents, you don't have to, bully kids. I mean, some people, I think, they think that bullying is part of being part of the cool or in group. And, yeah, I mean, it's an influence from the other students as well. If they're out there swearing, then, even some of the good kids are going to swear a little bit. And does that make it okay? Not at all. It's really just disgusting to me how these kids act nowadays. And I know not all of them are like that, but there's just something that, and you can't, like, even with the teachers, they'll try and do something about it, but then it's a teacher, and the kid's not going to listen to the teacher unless, I mean, if the teacher follows suit, then yeah, but for the school system I'm thinking of, I don't really even trust the teachers. I mean, I didn't when I was in school. I don't know how they are now, but it's such a backwoods setup that I don't really trust any of it, but that's just me. I mean, it's going to be tough, especially when my kid's going to school. I'm going to be so critical of everything. But we'll see how it works out. And do you have any thoughts on that subject in particular?
Yeah, I think it's developed more. Like, I actually didn't go to the school that my brother did. Through my 4th and 5th grade years, I don't know what happened there, honestly. But I came back and it seemed like everything's changed, and like I remember, like in 6th grade, people were already swearing in certain people in my class. But
yeah, I mean it's different things. I mean, I don't know what people do in school nowadays, but like when we were in school, I know with Christy as well, she did something very similar, which is kind of surprising to me because I thought we were the only ones who really did it. But we got this little composition notebook. I've kind of got one here, and like I've got a studio cam going as well, so they can see it on the studio cam. But we used to take a little notebook just like that, and we used to write stories in it. And we were big into medieval stuff, and we were kind of, I guess we could be the nerds, but we didn't really look like nerds. But plus, I did taekwondo, so I mean, people knew that I'm not a pushover by any means, and so I could kind of get away a little bit better with being into the nerdy stuff like the medieval and that kind of thing. But anyway, I used to take this little notebook and we would take turns writing in it, and I would start off with my character and I would write like this big paragraph, and then during break between classes or something, when the bell would ring, you'd hand it off to the next guy. And we had like 4 people doing this, and he would get a hold of it, and during his next class, he had free time, he would write in it and write for his character's portion, and then so on and so forth. And then as all these characters get tied in together, and each person only controls their character, and they can add an element to the story, like a fire breaks out in this house or something, or a dragon swoops down and attacks, I don't know, or something like that. They would add their own element, and pretty soon we had a pretty good story going along. And it was like an RPG game back before Skyrim existed, back before Oblivion existed. I mean, we were doing this kind of stuff, and it was your role-playing game, but basically written out in text format. And so it was pretty fun. It passed a lot of my time and made the school day bearable. And for some reason, we kind of stopped doing that around freshman and sophomore year. I don't know why. I guess it was something to do with the relationships of the guys, and people weren't getting along like they used to. And I mean, it happens, obviously, but those are some of my better memories, just doing that kind of thing. And Christy, she did something very similar with her friends, and so, I mean, I just thought that was surprising that other people have done it. I don't know if you've done anything like that before. Probably not. I don't remember hearing about it anyway.
No, not in that conventional sense. We never really like wrote out stories or anything, but we would make short stories and we would share them with each other just for fun, just to pass some time in class when we had the chance to. So, yeah, it was pretty fun.
So moving forward, let's talk about high school for a minute. For me personally, there were a lot of things that happened that I didn't care for or didn't necessarily approve of. I went to Votech, so I was gone for half the day about. And one of the other reasons I took that was because it was about an hour long bus ride to the Votech place over in Lewisburg, Missouri. And so round trip, that's about 2 hours of the day. I don't have to do anything. So I was pretty happy about that. But when I was in class, I was taking the harder classes. Like I was in Language Arts 4. Well, Christy wouldn't say that's a hard class, but it's some more advanced stuff, comparatively. And I was taking those kind of classes, and just some of the things that this backwoods school can get away with, like some of the students texting the teachers and stuff like that, like a male student texting the female teacher. I wasn't a big fan of that. I didn't see how that was, something that, that kind of relationship should have going on. And I think that may have jaded me a little bit based on, just everything that I had seen and the way the students talk about the teachers and how much they love each other. And, oh my gosh, it's so wonderful and this perfect little life. And I love my teacher so much, and just all that crap. I mean, maybe I'm just too strict, but I like to keep it professional. You go there, you learn, you get along, and then you go home and you do your thing. You don't need some little personal relationship with your teacher where you're like, oh, let's play with their car, or let's, put balloons in their schoolroom, or, something like that. But that's just me. I'm weird, I guess. I don't know. But, in these small town redneck type setups, I guess you can get away with that kind of stuff and do whatever you want, and it's just, hunky-dory, as they would say. So, I don't know. I mean, that's just my view on it. Nowadays, I don't know how it is in the big school. I know in the bigger schools you can't get away with that kind of crap. I mean, but here, some of the pranks they've talked about and doing stuff with people, like the teachers' cars and just playing jokes and all this wonderful stuff, I think it's not worth the time. I mean, every time my class tried to do something, I would usually not partake in those events. Every time I could get away from it anyway. But does your class do anything like that?
No, not exactly. I mean, we get along with our teachers, and I personally don't have any connections with my teachers outside. I kind of try and go to school and then come home as soon as I can, just because, frankly, I don't really like school. But I don't know.
And that's part of the problem, I think, is that they just don't make school very fun anymore. And, well, I doubt it really ever was, based on what I've heard from the older people, writing on a green chalkboard or whatever, a blackboard. I'm not sure if, math on a chalkboard was that intriguing or not, but, there's got to be a separation between, fun and learning. I mean, I guess you can get away with doing it together like that, having a fun time learning, but in the end, I mean, writing that 6-page essay is not going to be fun when you've got, Skyrim sitting on your desk next to the TV. I mean, which one are you obviously going to lean toward? So, at some point, you have to buckle down and you have to just get through it. I mean, I don't like going to work every day, but I have to do it because I have to pay bills and, I have to have money to buy that copy of Skyrim. So, I mean, you got to make sacrifices everywhere, and school is, 12 plus years of sacrifice.
Yeah, I agree. And it's longer than that sometimes if you're wanting to go to college, but I'd say it would be worth it to go to college just to have that better education and to have more fields open in your path.
I think it's slightly better education, and slightly the jobs want that piece of paper saying that you're certified to do whatever you are applying to do for them.
Yeah.
But and like I was telling him the other day, college is a lot different too. I mean, you can have one class for the whole day, and that's like all you have to do. And then it just depends on what you want to go into and that kind of stuff. I mean, if you go to like a more technical school or a private college or something like that, then obviously it's going to be a little bit different. But I mean, with normal colleges, you could have a class at 9 o'clock at night, or you could have a class at 8 in the morning. I mean, it just depends on your own preference. You could have a class in the morning and then a 3-hour break before your next class. I mean, it just depends on how you want to set it up. I mean, they give you a lot of freedom for that, and really they should, because as much as they charge you to go to that college, yeah, they should probably give you a lot of options. So, I don't know. I mean, college and high school are way different. You almost can't even compare the two. But, yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, and I can't even, looking at school as a whole, I think my earliest memory is actually from preschool. I remember playing with those blocks.
Oh,
The big multicolored blocks and building stuff. And
yeah, that's pretty much the only thing I remember of preschool also, and painting big portraits of just random lines on a paper. But
yeah, and the hand paintings and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
I think really you could almost look at that as a measuring stick for as far back as the human mind can remember, like how far back your memories can go, and that's really when they start to become formative, and you can maintain those memories from that point on. But I mean, some memories really are just a series of random images, and or a random moment in time, just a few seconds, like a little snapshot from your life. I think the earliest memory I have was probably, well, I can't even say how old I was. I was still crawling, I know that, and I was crawling on my parents' couch in the yellow house over in Halfway. And I remember I was crawling and came pretty close to falling off the edge of the couch, and like that was big for me back then. And so I must have been really small, really young, but I think that's my earliest memory. What would be yours?
Honestly, I really didn't remember anything until about preschool. I remember getting dropped off and like dreading the whole day and just like crying my eyes out some days just because I didn't want to go to school at all.
Yeah, I remember how bad that was. I mean, there were some mornings I really had to fight. At some point, I was in charge, because I was the oldest, and there was my sister, who is 4 years younger than me, and then Zach, who's almost 10 years younger than me, and then Clarissa as well, who's younger than Zach. She is 13 now, and I would always have to round them up in the morning and get them ready for school, because I think Mom and Dad were both off to work or doing something.
Yeah.
And so I had to get up, and get everybody ready and make their breakfast for them and get them on the school bus on time. And looking back, I was actually a pretty responsible kid, thinking about that. But, yeah, those were interesting days. I mean, I remember so many cold mornings walking down to the bus stop, and then sometimes the bus would be like halfway to our lane already, and we've got this huge walk down the lane still to get there, and the bus would wait on us for so long. And our bus driver was Bill Leanne for a long time, and I was really sad to hear he passed away not too long ago as I'm recording this podcast. And yeah, it was an interesting time in my life, and as I'm sure it was for a lot of people. But sometimes thinking back, I do wish that I could revisit some of those moments in time. But I also wouldn't give up what I have now. But I do miss some of those memories, and then some I definitely do not miss. Some of the people. It was always interesting, the drama that went back and forth between me and other people, and I would feud with people for some reason. I have no idea why that would happen. I mean, sometimes there's one guy who he lived right next to us, and sometimes we would get along, and then other times we would be feuding, and I don't even remember why. I think a lot of times, I was such a quiet kid in school, I think a lot of times it was just based on me being friends with this other guy, and the other guy starts trouble with him, and I kind of side with the other guy, or I'm like buddies with him at the time, so I just kind of get roped into it. And I never was outspoken or mean toward anyone that I can remember, but just being guilty by association, he started being that way toward me, and that's how you get a little mini rivalry going. And I think I a lot of people were at ends with each other at some point or another, but in the end, everybody became friends again, and it's just how it works, I guess. Not really friends. I wouldn't consider them friends. Honestly, I can think of very few people from my class who I would still, to this day, consider a friend. I have a lot of acquaintances, but very few friends. I mean, I can't remember the last person that I talked to from my class. And I graduated in 2008, and we're recording this in 2013. And yeah, I'm honestly not sure who the last person was that I talked to from my graduating class. Granted, there was only like 14 people in that class, but actually Skylar. I talk to him all the time. He's probably my best friend at this point, so we regularly talk. I mean, obviously he's on the podcast all the time, but I mean, other than that, I have no idea who it would be. I mean, and going back, I guess I'll bring you in here. Do you have any relationships like that where it's like kind of a rivalry back and forth, or that somebody that you'll see yourself being friends with in the distant future?
Really, I guess I can consider myself lucky because my class is probably of about 20, and really we've stuck together. Well, there's kind of the people who have stuck together being like the guys, and then there's the girls, and then it's just we've never really broke up, which is kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess it's good that you can have that kind of thing. I mean, especially now that you've escaped the middle school era. I mean, at this point in high school, you're either friends with the guy or you're not, and this is kind of just how it's going to stay. I mean, I don't think things changed very much for me in high school, so friend-wise, I mean, people move away and come back and stuff like that, but I think it's pretty much all set at this point for the most part. I don't know how it is with different schools or even things nowadays, but yeah, so I mean, school itself, it's quite the experience. It's definitely, I don't know, it's something you have to go through. I'm glad I don't make the rules in society as far as the schooling goes, because I don't know how I would do it. I guess the way they're doing it is the way that works because it's lasted this long. So, yeah, did you have any final thoughts to add to this podcast in general?
I don't know. It's just something that's necessary and something that's important and unavoidable, so you might as well just go through it, because I know that I will probably miss high school once I graduate. I'm not going to miss it right now.
I do not miss high school, just for the record. I do not miss high school.
I think it's going to more be, I'm going to miss sports, I'm going to miss friends than the actual education. But yeah, I can kind of see where you're going. I really am eager to get out of school right now.
Yeah, there's only 2 years left. And I mean, when you look at it, when you're in 6th grade, it seems like it's never going to end. But it does, and it goes by pretty fast. And, a lot of people will get all sentimental about it and be all sad and miss everybody. But to that, I say, who cares? I sound like Skylar right there. But honestly, life goes on. You can get over it. If you're one of those guys who has to wear your stupid, what are those things called? Those jackets, with the Letterman's jacket. If you're one of those people who have to wear that just to feel cool again, then that's pretty pathetic. But honestly, life goes on. I do miss middle school a little bit, but overall, my life is a lot better now, and I'm happy with where I'm at. So, yeah, that's pretty much the end of this podcast. I mean, we've run a little bit long, but that's okay. I think with editing, we might short it down. I don't know. But anyway, I think we will do another podcast on this subject in the near future. I'm going to do one on aliens coming up pretty soon. Stay on top of it. This is the Grimm Times Podcast. I'm Jeff Jarman. That was my brother, Zach Jarman. And thank you for listening. And you're a freshman?
Yeah, no, I'm a sophomore.
Sophomore this year, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm enjoying school right now. I definitely thought my ideal time for school would be in my junior high years because just frankly the work was a lot more easier, and I still got to hang out with friends, and I rode the bus too from like kindergarten all the way till I was like a freshman actually, and we sort of did the same stuff, but we had different card games.
I would say middle school is the best for quite a few reasons. I mean, one being there was a certain innocence that came with being in middle school, whereas it's really disappointing to me nowadays with these freshmen and sophomore. Think of it as existing at that point. Basically, everybody was kind of on the same level and could stand up for themselves and things like that. But mostly, for me, high school was not very fun. I would say my best memories of school were in middle school, probably. And even like, I don't know, maybe fifth grade, probably, somewhere around there would be the ideal time as being my favorite in particular, because I remember riding the school bus. You would have like an hour-long ride on the school bus some mornings. Like if we were the very first ones to get picked up, which sometimes we were, depending on the route that they took for that quarter of the year or that half of the year. And we would be the very first ones, and so like early in the morning, 7 a.m., getting on the bus, or 6:50, you would, if you have the small town kind of complex, then, most likely it's not going to be quite as prevalent. But every now and then you will have that kid who is just an idiot and, uses his size to pick on others. I can think of
For sure.
a couple of examples in particular. I won't name names or anything, but I will say his initials are WW, so I don't know. I'm sure that, I'm not in the class, so I don't know for sure, but just based on meeting some of these people, you can tell, kind of what happens, and so, yeah, I don't know. It just depends. Some people would say, oh, no, it doesn't happen at all, and this kid's an angel, and it's not at all, going to happen, but this is my podcast, and I can say what I want to say. So, moving on. Back when I was in school, I didn't really notice bullying, or I didn't really. You'd be in for a ride, and you could either sleep, or you could, read a book, or do whatever. And at that time, Pokemon cards were really coming out and being popular. And so that was one of the things that we really did. We would trade Pokemon cards on the school bus. And so I really enjoyed that. That was fun for me. A lot of people had different cards, and, we'd get our own little booklets and keep pages and pages of these cards in them. And that would be more the highlight of our day than the actual school part of it. Lunch was always my favorite part because it's not school. And so, I don't know. We used to do a lot of different things. Do you do anything like that in school nowadays?
Sort of. It's well, now the society has the new game Magic, and everybody's playing that. Me personally, I don't really play it, but yeah, and like
Alrighty, hello, and welcome to the Grimm Times podcast. Today, we are going to talk about something a little different. I have my brother, Zach, who is going to be joining me on the podcast shortly. Today, we're going to discuss modern-day school systems and procedures and things like that. How it compares to when I was in school, and which was surprisingly a long time ago at this point. The big topic right now for everybody seems to be bullying. Do you think there's any bullying going on in your class anyway?
Well, I think it varies. I can see it a little bit, I guess, but I think it affects more of the bigger population schools.
Yeah, I guess